under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. I heard you had a question.
Yeah, I was up by Valville, and the Amish up there, their buggy, of course, the buggy had flashing lights on the back of it, and it had actually some type of headlight in front. It was dark, I come up behind it, I didn't know what it was, I see this flash.
But you knew something was
But
there.
I knew it was there. And when they go by my house at 11, 12 o'clock at night, and you look out and you see one oil lamp painted red on back, pretty hard to see that, especially on a foggy night or a snowstorm. They're out there. I mean, I just think they should have some type of better reflection on the back of them wagons.
I agree. I mean, only because you talk about it's not a significant number of accidents so far, or deaths or fatalities, but certainly when they're riding around in those cars and they get hit by a car, there's a lot of damage and a lot of injuries, and before we wrap up this conversation, I want to address, we have the city of Oswego and the state police here as well. Do you fellows have anything that you'd like to add to this conversation while we're...
I just want to go back with the Amish. My name is Paul Carter. I'm the traffic supervisor down in Oneida. So I cover all 7 counties that Troop B covers.
Thanks for coming.
You're welcome. In regards to the Amish, it's been since 2008, ever since they passed the slow-moving vehicle emblem law, that we've been dealing with the Amish trying to get them to conform. But the way the law reads, to get anything changed, you have to change the vehicle and traffic law. So most of them, you're either going to see the orange triangle, the orange emblem on the back of a buggy. That's minimum, that's the minimum they need. Or you need, it doesn't matter if it's day or night, the red lantern on the left-hand side of the buggy, on the the roadside, and 72 square inches of reflective white or gray colored tape. Those are the only 2 requirements that the state requires on an Amish buggy. Most of them are meeting that criteria on an actual buggy that they're carrying their family around in on a Sunday, going to church, going to school, whatever. Some of the things we don't find them conforming to are their hay wagons, or you got the 2 horses that they're drawing, whatever wagon with the milk crates in the back, going to a market. That's where some of the equipment that we find they're not conforming to. A lot of our crashes that we come across and that we investigate, I can't count for the county or anywhere else, but the crashes that we're investigating, especially where the fatalities occur, of course they're getting hit from behind. We deem and determine that, okay, they had a triangle or the lantern and the tape around the back of the buggy. That's not against the law. What we're finding is people are not paying attention. It's either they see that they're going too slow, they don't know how fast they are going coming up behind, or it's the person's on a phone, they're texting, in a fatality, we can prove that person in that car that hit that buggy and killed somebody, was on their phone because of, again, it's a fatality. We can subpoena their phone records.
Sure.
In a property damage or a minor personal injury crash, we can't do that with that person driving the car. We can ask them, were you on your phone? They could lie and say no, and okay, it's either following too close or fail to use due care approaching a horse. So it's
Right.
a balancing act between.
Yeah, and again, I understand what you're saying. I appreciate it, because it boggles my mind that you can't see a horse and buggy going down the road in the middle of the daytime, or a wagon full of hay.
I agree.
And
Even
are they
a
mostly
farm
kids?
Even a farm tractor,
Yeah.
same thing. It's people. People driving now are,
Careless.
either oblivious, careless, reckless. So,
But we can't put all the blame on the Amish. I agree with you. Go
no,
ahead.
you can't.
You can't put all the blame on the driver himself. If the speed limit's 55 miles an hour, he's doing the right speed, he comes over the hill, and there's an Amish doing 5 miles an hour. And a car's coming the other way.
But I think if any
It could be a
time-
bicyclist too.
Yeah.
Well,
Somebody
and the
runs.
car's coming the other way.
Yeah. That's not.
What were you saying, that the state allows us to have the Amish, have those triangles?
That's the requirement, it's either.
It is a requirement, then we've got a lot of them that don't.
It's either the triangle, or, again, now it's 72 square inches of reflective tape
Right,
on the back and the red lantern.
okay, see, I see
Day
a lot
or
of
night.
them either, that's what I'm saying, I see a lot with neither of those things.
I'm starting to see some in other counties now, they're actually going to, they actually have flashing lights on them,
Yeah,
Some of them,
which is great.
most of them now around here, the new people are skimming from Ohio, they have polished aluminum strips across the back that reflect at night, during the daylight you'll see them, but they don't have, they don't even use tape, they use polished
Yeah.
aluminum strips.
Anything reflective.
Glued to the, yeah,
okay, so,
and I don't know that I've ever seen anybody with a triangle in this county.
No,
okay.
they only put the lanterns on at night. They don't have them during the day. I mean, I don't know why.
I don't know why
That's
you
not
need one in the
doing
daytime.
good, 'cause it's a kerosene lamp. Really, that's all it
Right.
is.
It's very dim.
Very few of them get hit in the front though, with the horse coming in,
Yeah.
right? People can see the horse, they just can't find, seems that, I don't know. All right, so look, we're not really doing this to pick on the Amish, I mean, it's really to protect people from getting hurt and injured.
Protecting them.
Yeah, trying to protect them.
I seem to remember a conversation when we had that meeting with the Yates County Sheriff's Department, that triangle represented some non-religious belief with, or religious belief with the devil, because it was red. The bishop had given a declined allowing them to have the triangle, so that may be why we don't have the triangles on the backs.
And a lot of it comes right down to, we all throw that out that they're on, but some of them are not. Some of them are Mennonite, and it depends on the sect, even within the Amish. They all have different, it's not one cohesive group. They all have different rules as to
Right.
what's allowed.
Right,
And I think that's where the tape came into play.
right.
If I remember right with that conversation, that the county had met with the bishop at one point to put the triangles on, and they refused to do it.
Well, also down there in Yates County, they widened the road so that the carts could go off the edge of the road like on the shoulder. What's the chance of that happening?
Let the town do it.
Sounds to it. All right, well, any other questions? Well, I want to thank the Traffic Safety Board for coming in and our law enforcement professionals for coming in to discuss this. We're going to move on, so you guys in our highway department, thank you so much for coming in. I know you have busy lives, so if you want to exit, you're welcome to now. Give you the door if you want. Opportunity to run out of here. Thank you for coming. Thank you.
But I remember that conversation. Do you remember that? I almost think that's.
Okay, so we do have some other guests here that we will, after we get our resolutions done, we'll get back to the fire department and we'll discuss the proposal. So let's go back to the original. Can I get everybody had an opportunity to read the minutes, I hope, or at least someone? Can I get a motion? So moved. Second. Any discussion? All in favor? Aye. Motion carries. Do we need to wait for a minute? No, you're good. You got that? Yes. Okay. All right, so let's move on to resolution one, resolution authorizing the budget modification, sheriff's office, insurance recovery of automotive suppliers and repairs. This is a standard, we should never take it off, right? This is our deer again. Hope it's a different deer each time we get it.
It's the same one, can't get it.
Can't catch it.
Can't catch them.
Keep running away.
Can I get a motion for discussion? Second?
Second?
Second, thank you. Any discussion? They hit another deer, they're taking the money, and putting it back in their fleet. Any discussion on that? Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
Motion carries. All right, PS2, resolution authorizing the transfer of funds from the county fund balance to the probation department to purchase of a vehicle. Okay, it was in their budget last year to lease a car, they couldn't find a lease. Phil, Dave couldn't be here today, you wanna chime in on this?
Well, what you said is exactly right. They've been trying to find the correct vehicle via lease for a year, haven't been able to do it. So we're recommending that they purchase a vehicle. They've identified one, since it's not in they had enough to lease in their budget, but not enough to buy. What this does is transfer enough money into their budget so they can purchase the vehicle. This will be their third, they have 3 vehicles. They're down to 2 right now.
Any questions, any further discussion? All those in favor? Motion carries. PS3, resolution authorizing the execution of a lease agreement regarding the Scribe Tower with Constellation Energy Generation. This is a 911 thing. They want a lease spot, a new spot on the town, a new tower. That's a good thing. They're paying us. Oh, can I get a motion? I'm sorry.
So when
Second, thank you. Any discussion? All in favor? Motion carries. All right, PS4, resolution authorizing budget modification, fire coordinator's office, automotive equipment. Go ahead.
Yeah,
Oh, wait, can I get a motion?
Motion.
Thank you.
Second.
Thank you. Okay.
what we're doing, we're looking at, using the money we, made on the, sale of some equipment from the training center, put it in the budget line to purchase a used SUV for the K-9, for our Sim K-9.
Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Okay, motion carries. We got 2 add-on resolutions, 5 and 6. I just numbered them, so 5 is gonna be, resolution authorizing budgetary modification sheriff's office to accept federal cops office grant to fund purchase of virtual training simulator. Is that reading right? Casey,
Sounds
did you read right?
Yes.
All right, you wanna, can I get a motion? I'm sorry?
So moved.
In a second, thank you. All right, Kate, tell us about it, if you would. Is your grant right that we're accepting?
Yeah, I mean, I've been working with it, I didn't write it, but,
Oh.
so it's, community oriented policing service with COPS office, they had, provided some, awarded us funding for the virtual training simulator for the police academy. This was awarded last year in September, and, we'd like to accept the funds, move them over and purchase the equipment.
Terrific. Any questions? All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Hearing none, motion carries. Thank you. PS6, resolution authorizing budgetary modification, sheriff's office to accept New York State Division of Criminal Justice Services grant to fund body-worn cameras for patrol division. Can I get a motion? Moved and seconded. Don, you wanna talk about that, or?
Pretty straightforward, they're giving us money to buy more body-worn cameras.
Do we have enough cameras now? I mean, are we still lacking in cameras? We need more?
I think
We're short some of our SROs and
Okay.
investigators, not everybody has them.
Okay.
That's why we applied for the initial grant, and that's what we're gonna do, is purchase more cameras, and we have backup and enough. So almost everybody has them all the time with this money we have.
Okay, any discussion?
How much are the cameras? I mean, 28,000, how many cameras?
We do them on a 5-year lease, and I don't know what I got that here. So we're just looking to accept the money. Once we get the grant, then we're gonna get a quote for what we can actually purchase with that.
Okay.
But I know to do the whole department, we went through a capital project last year, it was $450,000
I was
for,
just curious.
for 60 for 5 years.
Okay.
So if we do the math there,
So we actually lease these things? Is that how it works?
it's a 5-year program. I think we own them at the end, but the 5-year program, we paid up front
Right.
where we get all the cloud storage.
Right. There's a lot
Because
to go
that's the big expense after you get into it, storing all the data.
Have we found any problems with these? Are they working all right for us?
Yeah, they're fine. I mean, really, the cost of the cameras is nothing.
Right.
It's
It's the
data
support
storage.
that, yeah.
It's a storage, I was expecting.
Okay.
And the ability to retrieve it, package it for court, the press, and everything goes along with it.
Any further discussion? Hearing none, all in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Okay. Before we move on to bids, yeah, let's get to the bids. We have a bid, Kathy, this is yours.
Bid 23 EMO 001 GI increase. At the recommendation of Rich Mitchell and in consultation with purchasing, we're gonna hold this bid for this month and rebid it. So I hope to bring it back next month. Any questions with that?
Would be rejected right now.
Yes, rejected and rebid, sorry. Steve,
Do we have to have a motion for that?
Yes.
All right, so, we have a proposal to reject the bid. Can I get a motion? I can get a second. Okay, we got Mel motion and Herb seconded. So for discussion, any questions about this? Okay, all in favor of rejecting the bid?
Aye.
Any opposed? Hearing none, motion carries. Very good. Okay, ARPA, Cleveland Fire Department, Fulton Fire Department. Mr. Turner.
Yes, sir. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Cleveland Fire Department, pretty straightforward request. It was in two parts, actually. One part had to do with unreimbursed expenses they had for COVID to buy supplies, materials, and equipment to deal with their increased sanitation needs during the pandemic. They also had in their request for $10,000 to help with the cost of a new vehicle for fire chief. The task force recommended $16,298 that covered the COVID-related expenses and not the $10,000 for the vehicle.
But it's been the policy not to purchase vehicles, right, at this point so far in the ARPA?
For the most part, yeah. They're without significant justification, it wouldn't go very well in an audit. And so far, no one's had significant justification.
You want the committee to approve these going forward, right?
Yes.
Yeah, the request from, the suggestion from the task force is for the $16,000 for your consideration. At this point, the other committees typically address these with a resolution for each of those projects.
So can I get a motion to support the Cleveland Fire Department's request for $16,298 for COVID-related expenses? Thank you, Mel. Can I get a second?
Second.
Thank you. All right, any discussion? No?
I'm just trying to digest it. What was this, the COVID-related item part of that? What were they, what is it for? I
It's,
didn't quite understand that.
So they provided documentation for the various expenses they had during the pandemic period for the increased sanitation that was required, new equipment to service, and cleaning costs. It's not unlike what a lot of other emergency service providers had to go through, right?
Didn't they put some new sinks in for hand washing and that kind of stuff? I thought that was that. Was that the?
Yeah, they had some updates to their locker room that were similar to that.
Any further discussion? I think it was in prior, I think it was in the works, right? Herb?
This is Cleveland and Fulton.
Well, Fulton will do next. We have to do each one separately.
All right.
We'll get to Fulton. Yep. Any more discussion on the Cleveland request? Hearing none, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Hearing none. All right, that one carries. All right, now let's go to the Fulton Fire Department request. David?
Yeah, so the Fulton Fire Department has a pretty old internal communication system, and during COVID, when they were trying to socially distance the employees, they discovered that given the space available to them for that purpose, the communication system didn't serve their needs, and so there was people on shift who could hear some of the incoming communications and people who couldn't, and they had the vendor look at their system, and there's been some upgrades and changes suggested to help solve that problem within the firehouse, and they've asked for $20,000 to help them offset the cost of doing those upgrades.
I get a motion to open this up for discussion? Can I get a second? Lori?
Second.
Okay, any discussion, any questions?
Yeah, I do.
Richard?
David, didn't we approve money for Fulton for a remote space of some sort?
It was, the police department wanted to set up a couple of satellite offices, one over closer to the high school and one, down in the, northeast quadrant of the city, just so they have, a place within those neighborhoods that they could respond faster from, as opposed to, having an officer like go all the way back to the police station on the, east side of the river, do his paperwork. Now they have a place in a neighborhood where they can stop, be available closer to places where there's, typically more activity than in other places in the city. But that was for the police department.
Okay.
And you also needed a second location for accreditation. That was part of the gig. All right, any discussion about the fire department? Herb?
I'm not clear on the communication, what do they need that for? I mean, does Fulton City have their ARPA funds as well?
Dave?
Every community received, ARPA funds.
They did put some into this though, wasn't it? They were looking for a split on this, wasn't it? I don't remember exactly.
I can't tell you from this note how much Fulton put into the, project, but I can get that information for you. And yes, they did get ARPA funds. They have, for lack of a better term, significant financial needs in the city of Fulton. And this is the kind of project that wouldn't raise to the level of first priority for them. It does create a better environment for the firefighters, because when a call comes in from 911 and it gets dispatched through the building, not everybody under this new arrangement, not everybody can hear those clearly. And so the new equipment would help resolve that problem.
Okay, and not that it matters, but can you just, if you have the information there, how many ARPA requests that we approved for the city of Oswego as compared to the city of Fulton? I think it's substantially more in the city of Oswego, correct?
There are substantially more in the city of Oswego than there are for any other community in the county. That is largely because that's where the largest, 20% of the population in the county is in the greater Oswego City area. And so you have more small businesses, you have more not-for-profits, because there's more potential applicants who could be eligible in the city.
Any further discussion?
I'd just like to see how much Fulton is putting in to this account out of their ARPA funds before I.
Can we find out? Is that something that we could find out before the meeting's over, or is that a?
Yeah, sure, I can check on that. It just,
Take
my only, I just want to suggest that if this is something the committee would like to see, or the legislature as a whole, and if that's going to be a condition of assistance, then we should apply that evenly across all municipalities, not just this particular one for Fulton.
Well, I agree, but haven't we always asked that the requesting municipality have skin in the game with these ARPA requests? Hasn't that been the ARPA policy?
We look for skin in the game, and we don't specifically ask if it's their ARPA money. So they may have other resources that they put towards this project, but.
I for one don't have a problem with this.
Yep.
Anything we can do to help the fire department and the city of Fulton, I think is a good thing. It's an insignificant amount of money. I think they're only looking for $20,000, right? Not that $20,000 is insignificant.
Yeah, and it
As far as
typically,
ARPA request goes, this is not on the top of the list.
typically in the smaller requests like this, that hasn't been a question, but I'm happy to find out for you.
Okay. Is anybody else concerned about that besides her? Is it an issue for anybody else?
No.
I'm gonna try to get you a number before you vote, or?
Well, I think we can probably pass it with a vote, and then you can just tell her what it is afterwards. I mean, if that's,
I'd just like to know what Fulton's doing.
Right.
Just like every other community, put in some of the skin, I'd just like to know what Fulton's doing.
Sure, it's a legitimate question. I mean, it's,
Easy that much right now.
all right, why don't we just, you you wanna hold, and then, you can find out and get back to us before we end the meeting?
Sure.
Okay, thanks, Dave. So, making a big deal about it, right? Okay, so, before we get to reports, we're gonna start with fire. They have a request, right? We have the Fire Advisory Board Chairman here, and, let's move on to that. I think Fulton was looking for money, wait till you see this.
Okay, well, like standing out, I'm Kurt Fisher, I'm currently chair of the Fire Advisory Board, and I want to take a few minutes today and just go over the recently enacted state law that allows for a partial property tax exemption for emergency responders, particularly volunteer firefighters and volunteer ambulance providers. So, just to give you a little property tax exemption overview, like I said, it is a real property tax law 466. It provides for this partial exemption. It actually is an expansion of a law that was already on the books that only applied to 30 counties, and now it applies to any counties across the state. The law requires that the governing bodies opt in. So when I say governing bodies, that's each individual taxing entity. So the county, the towns, the villages, fire districts, school boards, each on their own can opt to or not opt into it. It's not an all-inclusive process. Obviously, the purpose is recruitment and retention. So volunteer service is only from a resource perspective, and anything we can do to help encourage people to either start participating or continue to participate is of great value. And there's been a lot of surveys done. We did one in the county. They've been done at the state level. And one thing that consistently comes back is from the volunteers is, why can't we get some kind of a tax break or something to help compensate for the time we put in? The basics of the law is it's an exemption for up to 10% of the assessed value of the property. It has to be the primary residence. If it's not a primary residence, or if it's a piece of property used for more than primary residence, maybe I've got a business out of it, then it's prorated accordingly. For an individual to qualify, a member to qualify, they have to be in the district, they have to live in the district for which they are a member. So for example, I am a member of New Haven, I would have to live in New Haven. If somebody was a member in Scribe but lived in the city of Oswego, they would not qualify for it. And there's also a clause in there that allows for a life year exemption for someone that has provided 20 years of service. The law does allow for a couple additional optional additions for the governing bodies to opt into. One is that upon the death of the enrolled member, that exemption could extend to an unmarried surviving spouse, and also an option that in the event of a line of duty death, that benefit could extend to the unmarried surviving spouse. And then there's a process in there that the law talks about, which is certification of the enrolled member. Each member would have to submit a form to the assessor, basically applying for the exemption. And then the authority having jurisdiction would certify that yes, in fact, that individual qualifies. That certification is done by what they refer to as the authority having jurisdiction, which is in most cases the town board, and or the board of fire commissioners. Village boards could play into that in cases where there's a village. Definition of active member. The law itself does not define an active member, but because this law was already on the books, there was a previous opinion of council that was issued by the Department of Taxation and Finance that recommended that the best use definition would be that's in the Volunteer Firefighter Benevolent Law. And I included that there so you can read it. Once again, it's not super prescriptive. A couple things aren't clear. The member does need to be responding member. So it cannot be used for social members, members that are not actually actively responding in support of emergency services. We've had a lot of debate on this at various levels, fire advisory board and stuff, and some key considerations we looked at and said, well, what makes someone active? Well, they should be medically, because they need to be medically cleared. That would clearly identify that they're able to respond. They're trained, that would identify that they're able to respond. And are adding positive value to providing resources. And, you know, or we kind of identified that it could vary a little from organization to organization. We originally looked at saying, well, can we set a percentage of calls? But we had some examples that came out loud and clear that said, well, that may not be the best. You know, one example, I had one department that said, you know, we've got some individuals, they're got 40 years in, they're retired, and on Monday through Friday, we're a bedroom community. On Monday through Friday during the day, when nobody else is in town, those guys are reliable. They're there 100% of the time. But you know, they're typically in their more senior years, so on the weekend and stuff, they're not as likely to respond because the balance of the members are capable of carrying the calls then. It's during the week that they really need that support. So they may not make that percentage, but they are really critical on Monday through Friday during the day when a call comes in, they're the ones that are available to respond. So there's going to be a certain amount of judgment on the part of each organization or district that would identify what makes them really adding value to our response. So going on financial impact, and these are crude, rough numbers, but I think it helps characterize it. So the first thing is it does not reduce the total tax levy. The cost is redistributed to other taxpayers. So what do we think it's going to look like in Oswego County if the county were to approve this option? We have 30 fire departments in the county. Based on preliminary information we're looking at best probably 15 members average per department. We've got departments that don't have 15 members, but when you start looking at they can't be a renter. You know, if they rent, they don't qualify. If they don't have a district, they don't qualify. When all that stacks up, a pretty good number looks like we're probably looking at about 15 per department. And if I looking at just general assessment numbers, we're probably looking at about $100 that those particular members would see their county tax reduced by. Mike and I talked about it. Volunteer firemen are typically not living in $500,000 homes. Right? They're typically, you know, run-of-the-mill Oswego County homes. So, you know, that gives you about a cost of $45,000 a year is what we'd be looking at the county level if this would be approved. For the implementation process, each governing body first has to develop a local law, resolution, or ordinance. New York State Firemen's Association of Firefighters has provided sample or draft resolutions, and I've attached a copy here. Each individual governing body would have to hold a public hearing and then adopt a resolution establishing tax exemption. And as I already kind of said, the governing bodies of county, towns, villages, fire districts, and school boards. And we are actively pursuing at each of those levels across the county. To take effect for the upcoming school tax year, so the tax bills will come out this summer, and the 2024 county and town property tax, so those bills that come out in January of 2024, we would need the resolutions approved by May 1st. If they aren't approved by May 1st, then everything would flop forward another year until it is approved. One of the fire advisory, and big thing is the fire advisory board perspective is when we start talking about this, we really would like to see the county take the lead and be the first one to approve, because that kind of sets the example for the other entities if the county steps out first. So that's our purpose today, is to try and educate you and encourage and ask you to consider this benefit to help us continually provide the resources that we provide. So with that, any questions?
Any questions? No.
How does it work with auxiliary members?
Would not qualify.
Would not qualify.
No. Because they don't qualify for VFPL. So, and for those that aren't familiar, VFBL is the state program that provides injury and compensation benefits in the event somebody gets hurt in a line of duty. So they don't qualify for VFBL either, so they wouldn't meet the definition of VFBL. They've already been a lot of interpretations that they do not meet the definition of VFBL.
Okay.
No, I mean, Kirk?
I'm definitely in favor of helping out the fire department. But near as I can see, when I went to your class and stuff, the individual firemen have to do this every year. And you have to get the okay through the school district, you have to get the town and the county every year.
No, once the resolutions are passed, they're standing. What has to be done, as we understand it right now, every year is each year, the individual member would have to apply to the assessor that they want this exemption. And in each year, the authority having jurisdiction would have to certify that, yes, that member qualifies. But the resolutions are a one-time only thing. So once you adopt it, it's just every year determining who gets it. And that has to be done on an annual basis as we understand it now.
The governing bodies are the town, the county, the school taxpayers, and the county. There's three of them.
So there's only one authority having jurisdiction, that's typically the town board. And then in the few cases in the county where we have fire districts, it would be the board of fire commissioners. They're the authority having jurisdiction. They would be the ones who certify. So essentially, you know, on a simple basis, the fire department would develop a list of here's who we think is qualified, and the authority having jurisdiction each year would say, what's your basis for that? Okay, we agree, yes, they get the exemption. That would have to be done every year. But the resolutions are one time. So once each governing body approves it, that's a one-time approval.
Any other questions?
So a timeline we kind of laid out ideally would be is if we could, you know, do this presentation today, there's a draft resolution, maybe by the next month's meeting, you could approve the resolution, and then you'd have to do the public hearing process, could be at the legislation. In April, that would get us in by the May 1 date, which is when the assessments close or for determining taxes for the next round of tax bills.
Is it for just, this exemption is for volunteers or volunteers and paid?
Only volunteers, not apply to paid. And and while I'm a fire advisory board and my focus is on fire advisory board, if approved, it would also apply to volunteer ambulance responders, but we don't have a lot of volunteer ambulance responders left in the county. Most of them are on paid status now, so if you're paid, it doesn't count. It's only for volunteers.
Go ahead, I'm sorry.
See, I understand the dilemma of this, getting people want to do this. I get it. I will support it, but I'm not crazy about redistributing taxes. I'm gonna tell you right now.
Okay.
I guess that's my opinion, but
That's how the law is written.
Because of the guys, you know, when you get all said and done, even the schools, well, that's gonna be, you're gonna be pulling teeth on that one. But to get the schools to approve this in, what are you talking, $600?
We're looking at the average firefighter, if we get every governing body to approve, you are correct. We're looking at something in the range of $500 to $600. I mentioned it here, but this is just one tool in the toolbox. There are other things coming down the road. The state is looking at other things that will be funded at the state level. There's other things coming down the road to add to the toolbox to help continue to build or maintain membership. There's items in the proposed state budget this year coming around that they're looking at. And there was a state panel that looked at options, and there's a bunch of recommendations coming out of that. So there's other things coming down the road too. This is just one of many tools in the toolbox. I mean, this doesn't address the renter. So
Yeah,
renter,
but
this
keep in
doesn't
mind
qualify.
one thing. You and I as taxpayers are paying for that toolbox.
Yep.
Any way you wanna cut it. So,
Yeah, the only thing, like Kirk says, $500 or $600, that doesn't pay for gas for somebody to drive the calls
Exactly.
as a volunteer. So that's the kind of help that we're kind of looking for, you know, and
I'd rather see that help. I'm not opposed to this, but I would rather see, some sort of stipend for calls responded to, because this isn't gonna help us drag any new people in.
So one of the proposals that's at the state level this year is, there's a little catch there, is we have to be careful about reimburse, or how we stipend reimburse or whatever, because of the volunteer benevolent law, that it becomes paid. So there is a proposal on the books to try and open up the ability to do that kind of stuff. But right now, we have to be real careful about anything that would be perceived as compensation, because then that invalidates the VFBL, which is really critical, the events that we got hurt.
Well, as I told you on the phone, I support doing anything we can with the fire departments, but I would like to see some clarification on what active fire department means, active fire.
Okay.
Yeah.
That would need clarification on. Richard, you got something like that?
The county administers the VFBL and VABL programs that's raised on the tax bills, and it's through the county self-insurance plan, so we're familiar with that. Insofar as the exemption goes, if it's something you want us to look into, I would recommend getting real property tax, with my office involved. Those for exemptions based in state law have local laws that grant the exemption, and that would require 30-day notice typically for the public hearing, so we could, we can look into it and let you know. March 1 taxable status is passed, but we are also aware of other local laws we may have to pass regarding seniors and disabled exemptions, regarding enhancements on those. So you want us to look into it, we can, and I would certainly recommend getting with real property tax
Yeah,
as well.
Yeah, well, we're gonna have to do our research on this, I'm hoping to make sure we're kind of fine. But certainly, I think everybody supports the volunteer fire departments and hope that there's something that we can do. I don't, again, it seems like this is not gonna impact a significant amount of your members, and to the extent that we'd like to see it happen. I mean, obviously, you know, it's kind of a catch-22. We're gonna give you a break, but the guy next to you is not gonna get one because he's a renter, or his house isn't valued at $300,000, whatever it is, so they can make up that 200. Right? So
There is currently in place an income tax benefit.
Right.
And you actually have to choose one or the other. The income tax is $200. So for most members, if they own property, this is gonna be a little bit better than the income tax break. The renter can still continue to take their income tax break.
Sure.
And there is proposal at the state level to try to increase that also, to get it a little more on par with where it should be.
All right, well, we'll research this and look into it.
I have a remark, the chairman, regarding what qualifies you as a responding active member. Is there a certain amount of hours, certain amount of calls?
But like I said, we've debated that one the most, and it really comes down to, we're hesitant I would originally, quite frankly, was looking to try to say from a county level, this is what we recommend. But then as we discussed through it, we realized that, well, that may not fit every scenario. Like I say, the scenario where you got the guy who, he's critical to us providing service Monday through Friday during the day, but there's plenty of other people to pick up the slack the rest of the time. So, you know, they are critical when during that Monday through Friday during the day, they may not make 10% of the calls. Another example is, we don't see as much in Oswego County, very common out of Oswego County, is departments are moving to duty crews, where rather than when the tones go off, everybody responds, they have, you know, a number of people that man the station at night. Well, the great thing is, your response is guaranteed with a certain number of people and much faster. But I can tell you my experience, I rode an ambulance and I volunteered for a night shift for years. I only got 2 calls a year. But I was there and available, and certainly a higher level of protection, because it's guaranteed if somebody's going to show up. So we're trying to work through how do we define them.
So we finally came on.
Yeah.
So that's why we're careful that, you know, everybody's scenario is a little different. We don't want to put down something so tight that eliminates somebody that really is being a valuable responder.
Well, I think we're gonna need you to draw a line in the sand on this stuff.
Okay.
All right, so we're gonna need something, you can send in some proposals, of what you consider an active firefighter. I don't think we're gonna be able to sell it without that line being drawn, so do the best you can to incorporate it in such a way that we can include those people that you think are gonna fall through the cracks. And then when our folks look it over, they'll let you know if they agree with you. I think we gotta draw the line in the sand there, something like you can't just, what's active, I showed up for the barbecue on Saturday, so I'm an active firefighter, right?
And we're definitely agree with that. It's
Yeah.
got to be actively recovering alarms.
Okay. Any other questions? All right, thanks. Appreciate you coming in. Dave, you got an answer?
So yes, with two firehouses. This is 100% of this project cost, but they have made other improvements to the firehouses with new HVAC for higher sanitation of the breathing air, roof repairs, and several other things that they did use ARPA funds for. So this is just one small piece of their firehouse renovations, but this particular one, this is the full cost of the communications.
All right, that being said, any further discussion? All in favor of passing this?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? You gotta vote, man, make a stand here. Make a stand.
This sucks. Cause I don't wanna see half of Herb's, and not, you're
Right.
picking on you, Herb. Half the fire department's coming in with holes.
We need all five to pass it?
And they're getting it done.
Oh, so we need all five to pass it?
Yeah.
So, I guess it doesn't matter, you can remain silent if you wish. Herb, you voting against it? Let's see your hand. No, 2 against, 3, 4, motion doesn't carry. Okay. Okay, here's back to our agenda here. All right, let's start out with EMO since they're here, reports.
I'll start.
Yeah, we got a expedited version. because we
Yeah,
got
no,
that
I'm looking at,
Start.
we got a lot of plans we're working on. We've got a vendor coming in to work with our WebEOC platform. We have our MFI seminar next Tuesday at the URC from 8:30 to 12:30. We have an RFP out for our hazard mitigation plan, which, the state has given us some grant funding to do that. We're continuing with the SEMP update as well. We've got 2 plume exercises for the radiological plan this year, as well as 1 medical drill with the Oswego Hospital that we're working on. We already talked about the Matrice drone. We're going to reject the proposal, rebid it. Nothing else is outlined in my report, but John's working on 2 new grant opportunities that we have. Next month, we'll be bringing a $500 grant that we just received from Walmart, so we'll bring that to you guys to accept it. And
How's the drone in the box thing coming?
we're waiting, that's that USDOT, grant that they are looking, they haven't given yet, so that's supposed to be sometime in the first quarter, we'll know more about that one. So that's the one that's like $2 million worth of funding, so I guess there was a lot of people that applied for that, so they're trying to wade through all the applications, so, hopefully something new next month on all the grant opportunities that has. I'll let Nate talk to the EMS.
All right, Nate, you're up, go ahead.
Education's starting to drum up for the year. Our class in Fulton with Adam Howard as the instructor was just approved by the state Tuesday at midday. We already had 4 people signed up for it, so we're really excited about that. Advanced EMT classes in the works, and Mentor is hosting a 4-hour class for recertification that just started yesterday. We're also seeing an increase in requests for stop and bleed. Probation and corrections just recently borrowed some equipment to hold some internal classes, and the Phoenix Central School District has reached out. We're going to partner with them on doing a training for their staff and faculty. Pretty excited about that. Also, recent education, we submitted an application to the state to formally swap Renee's and my names as a course sponsor administrator. So that should be going through with the state shortly. More of a title than anything else, just kind of check the box. Otherwise, working through maintenance on the county's AEDs in our various facilities. We're all up to speed on those. Batteries have been replaced, pads have been replaced. We should be good. Next year, we're going to have to replace a lot of adult pads. But until then, we should be all set and ready to go on those. So definitely seeing heightened awareness on CPR. I think with this Buffalo Bills stuff that's happened. So it's drawing some positive attention to that in a good way. So we have AEDs in every building, so we're happy to service them. Other than that, we've been busy. That's basically what we got in a nutshell.
I did skip over the CSI update. There's really not much to update on. We're not going to meet again, I think, until April or March. And although I did hear back from Kevin, about the mapping, the digital mapping. said it's not that expensive, it's only like $3,500 per building, which, I don't know if that's expensive or not, I guess for government stuff, that seems pretty reasonable, right? But they'll come in and they'll map out the schools, we'll start with the schools and any other critical buildings that law enforcement deems is appropriate. Yeah, we haven't agreed to do this yet, but I think that's doable. I mean, if we can do that, and then that same company, if we buy into a little bit more, we'll allow 911 to take over the phones in the school. If somebody texts them, we'll be able to have live footage from anybody in the school. Fire got anything?
Just, we're setting up, we're all scheduled April, May, we're gonna start the training center back up, so March is gonna be getting everything ready to go. You guys are welcome to stop at any time.
We're committed to helping you guys. Don, anything from the sheriff's office?
Yeah, I'll keep this real short because I know we're short on time. Our original intention was to ask you to go in executive session to discuss the medical situation in the jail.
We can do that. You wanna call Rich back
Do
in?
you have time?
We've got 10 minutes. Is it gonna take more than 10 minutes?
No.
All right, then let's.
You want me to get Rich?
Yeah, can you grab Rich and then close the doors?
Yep.
We'll have to ask everybody, can we get a motion to go into executive session?
So the
Okay, so move. Thanks everybody for